you.
Sure. All stand. Salute. Pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Considered non-controversial or prior policy directions and given to staff that require only routine action by the board. The chair will advise the audience that matters may be adopted. One total motion, however, board may, at its option, upon request of a member or the public, consider matters separately. We have a motion, Mr. Morris, on the consent calendar.
I'll make a motion. Aye.
That should take care of the activities around that one. Presentations, who is going to do the Frwlfa LD1, LD9 agreement for assessment and apportionment?
So Seth is going to go over this this particular item.
Yeah, thank you, Drew, for the board. So our recommendation is a discussion and approval of an agreement between Frwlfa and LD1 and LD9 to apportion revenues from the assessment. At the dais and available is updated documents. What was included in the board packet has been reviewed by LD1 and LD9's counsel, and there were some modifications to both the agreement and the technical memorandum that is an attachment to the agreement. So just wanted to point that out. So any request would be to incorporate the latest documents provided to the board at the meeting. We need a mechanism to send money from Frwlfa to the LDs. The approach for this was based on a statement in one of the resolutions that Frwlfa adopted as part of the assessment, which was to apportion the funds in the operations and maintenance in accord with the approved budgets as documented in the engineer's report or approved by Frwlfa and the boards at LD1 and LD9. So the idea was we would split revenues based on the proportionate share of the budget. So LWA prepared a technical memorandum that outlines how that budget is apportioned. The approach is essentially to look at the net levy from the assessment. The total budget for Frwlfa administration, LD1, including MA3 levies, and LD9 was $2,031,294. Netted from that were the general benefits from the assessment that cannot be levied on the by Frwlfa. So any general benefits that accrued to properties, the quantification of those was $99,980. The idea was that those benefits would be funded by the fact that LD9 receives property taxes from the county that are part of the base 1% tax apportionment. So essentially the net levy that Frwlfa will place on property tax rolls will be a budget of $1,931,314. When you look at the budget and how that breaks out between Frwlfa, LD1, and LD9, essentially 82.1% of the budget is associated with LD1 and MA3 levies, and 17.9% of the net budget is associated with LD9 levies. So the approach that is being proposed is to use the revenues that come in from Frwlfa to first pay for the administrative expenses of Frwlfa and then split the revenues between LD1 and LD9 based on that 82.1 and 17.9% split on a regular recurring basis. What we've proposed in terms of the process would be you would first pay the administrative expenses from Frwlfa, and then once you get to the point where the county apportions their property tax revenues in January from the December installment, you'd pay for those expenses for Frwlfa first, and then anything remaining out of that first apportionment, plus anything that's been collected from direct assessments, would be split based on that percentage within 14 days. So we get the apportionment report from the county, gives us 2 weeks to approve a journal entry and go ahead and apportion the money to LD1 and LD9. You've taken care of Frwlfa with the first apportionment, then the next one in May, You'd split it based on that 82.1 and 17.9%, and then any cleanup apportionment at the end of the year, you would split. So the idea is that on the first fiscal year, so right now for fiscal year 23-24, Sutter Butte Flood Control Agency is providing services to Frwlfa. So you're not going to have to incur that $85,000 of operating expense in the first year. We essentially would be able to peel that off from the first year's revenues and bank that as a cushion. In July, we start our payments back to Sutter Butte. So of that $85,000 that would come in for administration, in July, we would use that to pay Sutter Butte its first up to $50,000 payment. Then you'd have $35,000 approximately in the bank that you'd be able to pay expenses for fiscal year 24-25 until you got to January. Then you'd get your $85,000. So you'd always have this $35,000 in the bank for Frwlfa administrative expenses to be able to cash flow each year until you got that first apportionment. So that works well, that we don't have to incur those expenses in the first year because we're riding on the $750,000 budget from Sutter Butte. That's the approach that's laid out in the tech memorandum and which would be an attachment to the agreement to be the mechanism for apportioning the revenues.
So do you want us to vote to approve the updated agreement now so we can take it to our board? Or what timing do you want for it?
That's exactly the recommendation. If this is agreeable to the board based on staff's recommendation and knowing that LD1 and LD9 council have reviewed and Frwlfa council has reviewed, if you were to approve the agreement today, we can then take it to you can take it back to the LD1 and LD9 board for approval, and then we'd be able to execute it at that point in time.
Michael, what's your pleasure?
I got a couple questions first. I've already talked to a couple on this. I just want to make sure. So we're not getting penalized, LD1's or LD9's not getting penalized for the taxes, the property taxes we already picked up on, right?
No, it was basically built into the budget accordingly. Essentially your budget, I think the estimate that I've heard of on property taxes, it's over over $99,000 a year.
Right.
It's about 140, and I mean it could fluctuate in any given year based on assessed values, but the budget that I saw from Sean Menard was that you expect to get over the 100,000. So it was built into the budget. The fact that LD9 gets that property taxes, they'd be able to use basically from an assessment engineering perspective, allocate that toward the general benefits for the district.
Right, but we're not actually including that in on our revenue, right?
No, I mean your budget for LD9 work is $431,000.
Right.
You'd be receiving the $100,000 in property tax, more than $100,000, but we'd only need to net $100,000 because that's the amount of the general benefit that was reflected in the budget for the engineer's report. Then you'd also get the $331,000. So you would essentially have revenues in excess of your budget, which was estimated at $431,000.
Okay, all right. I mean, when we went into this, LD9 realized that we were going to get a small amount of this, so that does make sense. I just wanted to ask.
Understood.
Thank you.
So that's again, the recommendation is to approve the agreement, or if you want us to change anything, provide direction on so we know how to move forward. But otherwise, if it's good, then I would request that the board approve the agreement so that Drew can then take it to the LD1 and LD9 boards for approval.
Are you good, Charlie?
I'm good.
How about you, Mike?
I'm good if you're good.
All right, I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Mike Morris,
Yes.
Mike Sigenmeyer,
Yes.
Charlie Hoppin.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. I'm good.
The LD1MA3 annexation status update.
Yeah, thank you, Charlie. I'm just going to give a brief update of where we are with taking over the MA3 area. Levy District 1 presented just on an informational basis to the Central Valley Flood Protection Board on April 25th. The item was received very positively from the board, so they will then go at the end of May and make an agenda item where the board can vote on the dissolution of Maintenance Area 3. 24 hours from actually right now, in this exact same room, LAFCO will be presenting the sphere of influence change as well as the annexation of Maintenance Area 3. So as long as nobody petitions that should be approved unanimously. If there is people that do petition that, we're going to have to go through an extended process, but we'll literally know this time tomorrow whether that's been approved or not.
Drew, by any chance, can the public do that, or does it have to be someone on the board, or I'm not familiar with it?
It can be any resident that is in MA3. So if you're a renter and you own, or you rent a property from an owner in the Maintenance Area 3, you potentially can petition that as well, from what I understand.
So so a few people that kind of stick in our hair can do that?
There's a limited population in that area, so they have every right to do that, but we're assuming that it's going to be a limited number, if any.
Okay, I just thought I'd ask. Thank you.
Yeah, and that concludes where we're at with the Maintenance Area 3 annexation.
You're earning that money.
So with respect to the Sabufka services, we had that long list of things we had to handle. The last thing on the list is establishing the Frwlfa Treasury Fund with the county. Drew and I are coordinating with the county on that. We essentially just need an agreement in place so that we have a place to put the money when it comes in from the assessment that'll be enrolled in August of this year and start rolling in January of 24. So that's the remaining outstanding item, other than just supporting the agency's administration. So of the $750,000 budget where we sit, as of May 10th, there's about $85,450 left remaining to help support the agency between now and June of 2024. That's right around where the budget is for the agency, but one of the things that you don't have this year is the $50,000 repayment for 23-24. It starts, essentially, it's a next year expense. So I think we're well within the budget to support the couple of meetings that I think we need to have with the agency. You'll basically one additional meeting to approve the assessment. We'll bring that forward in June for this board to take action so that they can enroll their assessment in August, and then we'll see if we need another meeting at all, if at all, until the following June of this board. So I don't think there'll be a whole lot of heavy administrative expenses on the behalf of Sutter Butte. Really, the only other thing is enrolling the assessment, paying the bills, setting up any recurring staff reports and things so that Drew can bring those back to this board, as it would probably only need to meet once or twice a year going forward. If anything comes up, we'll let you know. But yeah, the next action would be in June. Wildan will be prepared to bring forward the assessment. And then if there are any agreements that are needed with the county, we'll bring those forward at that time too. So that's about it.